How does the Department of Consumer Affairs, the prorated payments that are made to them, how much are you paying, and how do you feel about those? Are those payments, are they impacting your fund on a regular basis? Because obviously the difficulty you have in trying to anticipate or project when you have no idea the number of events you'll be receiving revenue from. So has that been a problem at all?
Senator, I'm not sure if we perceive it as a problem. We perceive it as it is what it is. I can tell you if out of our support fund, they take approximately 18%. Out of the neurological fund that we have, they take approximately 11%. Pro rata, and out of our pension fund, they take about 7%.
And what do you get from them?
We get, for the support fund, we get administrative services, including legal, HR, technical support, and I guess public relations support.
Okay, Assemblymember Bonilla, Madam Chair.
We've talked about the issue of the fluctuation and how California sometimes can't attract some of the larger events. They all end up in Vegas. And maybe you could just speak a little bit about that issue for the benefit of the members of the committee here. May not be something we can find an immediate solution to, but I think it's something that we should all understand what the barriers are to the stabilizing perhaps or increasing the number of events that we would have here.
Thank you, Chairwoman Bonilla. California, it's tough to get the really large events here in California because, to be quite honest, boxers don't want to come here and give us pay their tax money. I mean, if you're making $40 million, you want to live and go to a jurisdiction where there's zero income tax, and that's what happens, and that's what you see happening. Obviously, we have the venues, we have the infrastructure here in California for large events, and we have large events. But the really large events typically go other places, the really big ones.
There has been, we have reached out to some agencies, including the Franchise Tax Board, asking for some advice and a direction, which we did receive last year. And for example, they gave us a specific direction on how California would accept California consumers with regard to pay-per-view. So it would be up to a promoter and a fighter to contract in such a way where maybe they wouldn't be subject to a $50 million person have to pay 10% state income tax to California, so it's easy to go to another state. So there are things that we are working on and outreaching and advocating California, and we tell them all the time, and there's a letter in there from a promoter of a middleweight champ named Gennady Golovkin. We sold out the StubHub Center, standing room only, because we have great fight fans in California. This is a great state for supporting both boxing and MMA and kickboxing and so on. So we just have to keep reminding folks as cheerleaders that, you should bring your events here because we can handle them.
Well, that may be a sport soon.
Yeah.
There's a bill this year. Cheerleaders a sport.
Okay. But we're working on that, and thank you for that question. But I think Andy hit it on the head. It's a little bit tough to deal with that tax thing. They're going to have the next big fight at the MGM. So it's a challenge.
Yeah, interesting. Good question. One of the other questions that was raised and the issues raised in the paper and the information we have is the use of performance-enhancing substances. That was issue number 10, and that the Commission, as well as other states, has worked to try to evaluate whether there should be a potential for approval of licensees on some substances that are currently banned, but perhaps for therapeutic use. Are there your thoughts on that, and are there things that we can do statutorily to improve that situation for you if you so desire? Of course.
Look, I don't know how you do it, but you guys probably do know how to do it. But instead, if we had in statute that we use the World Anti-Doping Agency standards, okay, for our drug testing protocols, which is, by the way, what we use. It's just not written. I mean, it's in Rule 303, but 303 is very broad. Okay, it doesn't talk about the World Anti-Doping Agency standards. The World Anti-Doping Agency, most of you know what that is. I mean, they're well known. They do the Olympics and the. So if we had that, that would give the commission a lot of flexibility because banned substances appear often. That we've not really thought of this one or that one. But speaking to the point, that's to answer the second part of the question, but speaking more directly to the point of performance-enhancing drugs, it's a major problem. It's a major problem. And I've taken significant steps with the support of the chair to mitigate and to let fighters know if you come to California, you most likely are going to get caught. The punishment needs to be severe. If I've got a fighter making 7 figures, $2,500 is, I mean, it's not a very good deterrent. And we're going to find out oftentimes after the fact. Now, increasing out-of-competition testing is something that we're doing, and I think needs to do. And what that is that's testing them during their training camps. So while the juice would be very helpful, because what the stuff does is lets you train more and keeps you from getting hurt. That's some of the. But performance-enhancing drugs are a problem in this sport. It's getting worse, not better. I'm afraid to say. And we've had some very high-profile athletes that have came back positive, and it's unfortunate. It's very expensive. This commission has a budget of $1,426,000, specially funded. And I have to move around money to find the money to drug test. But this commission is going to drug test. If you come to California, you're going to get caught. And we want to make that very clear. And we need to really create an environment of deterrence to keep that from happening, because it goes beyond cheating. It goes when, and I'll use this because we were talking about this yesterday, when does it become assault? You have a license approved by this commission, but then you take a banned substance and hurt your opponent, injure your opponent. It's just something to think about, but we want to create that environment of deterrence, and any help the legislature could give us, we would greatly appreciate.
Mr. Chairman, if I could specifically answer you on issue number 10, the staff recommendation is, I think, something that we would support and urge you to consider. We do need California standards for banned substances on par with the WAD or WADA, as it's called. So that would be a big help to the commission. It also goes to therapeutic use exemption and transgender athletic competitors. We can talk more about that if you wish.
Well, that's very good. Thank you. Question? Yes.
Just a quick follow-up on this. And that goes to, you're pointing out that $2,500 when you're making 7 figures is nothing. Do you have any suggestions for what would be a significant deterrent? I don't know, not necessarily a particular dollar figure, but is it you don't get to fight in California, which has an economic impact for us? Or what are some ideas based on your experience in the industry with what would be a better deterrent than a $2,500 fine?
Percentage of the purse.
Percentage of purse.
Okay. And I would point this out to the members also, is we have a regressive structure right now. I have fighters that are making 7 figures, sometimes high 7 figures, and they're being penalized at $2,500 when I have a guy who made $1,000 who's getting a substantial fine. It's disproportionately targeting low-income athletes. They can't even off to, and I can't even find them enough to pay for the test that caught them. But a percentage of the purse would work. It would make it equitable for everyone. If you're making $400 or you're making $4 million.
And may I add something? And thank you for that question. Percentage of purse is the way that when we talk about it as a commission, and we understand that there are folks that worry, and they should worry, that this could get out of control. That would be having this kind of authority is sometimes problematic, and so we feel like that perhaps a great way to look at that would be if we have that flexibility, put a cap on it. Number one, number two, that money, those fines, could be dedicated to drug testing. which would solve another challenge.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Mr. Dodd.
Yeah, I'm wondering, where is the, like you have Major League Baseball, you have the National Basketball Association, you have the management of those organizations really overlooking this, having drug policies. Look, I mean, if they're not going to do it, I think it's important that we do something. But then if it becomes California is the only state that's doing something and they're rampant doing this everywhere else, I'm not sure that, I'm just not sure that we've succeeded in the end. Wouldn't it be better for you guys to be working with the organizing body of the sport and trying to give incentives or, I don't know how it works. But it just seems to me that the problem is much bigger in the state of California, obviously, and just dealing, with this here is, I think, makes it complicated.
Yes, sir, I agree with you. Unfortunately, my perception, see what Andy agrees with me, is that it's a disorganized industry, very disorganized. It's fragmented. There is not really uniform commission standards that really work, and we always end up being the commission, as I mentioned earlier, that leads on this. So, sorry.
Well, keep going. I just wanted to ask the chair for a follow-up question.
Of course, absolutely.
So I guess how many other commissions are there in other states? Does New York have one? Does Nevada have one? I'm wondering if it makes sense that, for you guys to be working with other states and say, let's get this thing under control.
Yes.
I sit on the board. I chair several of the Association of Boxing Commissions committees. And the ABC, it's called the ABC, is created in federal law. And we get together and talk about safety and these various things. Certainly, I've been having the discussions with my counterpart in Nevada, my counterpart in New York, Pennsylvania, Florida, these different places, and we're approaching this program together, and they're going to get there, okay? They're going to get there, but we need to get there also. Respectfully, sir, I don't know how the structure's set up like it is. I'm just trying to make the best of the situation for this state.
Thank you.
Thank you. And one other issue that was raised on the agenda and in the review paper was issue number 13 regarding the proper use of the neurological examination fund and how it's never, according to the statement, never been used appropriately, and the commission should consider how the fund could be best utilized to assess chronic traumatic brain injuries. And then there was a recommendation at the end here about requiring promoters to pay directly for the neurological exams of fighters who participate in their events. And that way the commission can save some of their resources for other things, for the use of the fund itself.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. One of the things that I learned when I first joined the commission was how difficult the regulatory promulgation process is. What we've learned after asking obvious questions like yours, frankly, why aren't we using this fund, for heaven's sake? Well, the regs aren't allowing us to use the fund, is the answer. And so we are working on the process right now. And we actually have a flow chart, if you'd like to look at it, where we are in that regulation process. But the way the regulations are set up is that we couldn't distribute the money. And Andy can give you some more detail here in a second. We would like to be able to use that fund. We would absolutely love to be able to use it to do MRIs, to do drug testing. It's sitting there. We want to use it. And so we're told, in working with the agency, the Department of Consumer Affairs, that once we can get through these regulations and fix them and bring them up to state law, then we'll be able to do that. Andy?
But I think we need to think about what the fund's actual use should be. Certainly MRIs are a good thing. Neurological exams are a good thing. I think we'd like to have those contracts, but we have basically 1,100 athletes that we license. And the appropriation on the Neuro Fund for this coming year, I believe, is $61,000. We will greatly exceed our appropriation will hit our limit very quickly if we started trying to do neuro exams on every fighter that we have and MRIs and all this. So we certainly, I think we're looking for some direction from the legislature on how to use it. We certainly have some ideas. Traumatic brain injury, the entire fighter is related. Traumatic brain injury, dehydration, all these issues are related. It's like sometimes we take one without the other, but they're all related. Drug testing, all these things are related. And sometimes we ask for fighters additional medicals, additional neurologicals after they fight, if they get knocked out, after they've spent the expensive licensure process, they've spent all this money, they get knocked out, and we ask for another MRI or another neurological. That could be a possible use of the fund, moving towards being able to use the fund to help us with the dehydration protocols. We just used a scale, and we're in the test phase with it. We just used a scale this weekend that measures dehydration, but that was the promoter's scale. It would be nice if the commission was able to have those kind of weigh-in skills so we could take specific gravity, we could do these things. And this thing's set up for the health of the fighter. We have money in this account, like $650,000. We could certainly use it to increase the health and safety of these athletes. That's the goal. That's what everybody wants. It's just how best do we get there? We have ideas, but the regs prevent us from using this in a certain way, and then the appropriation that we have on the fund would run us out of money quickly anyway, if that makes.
But just as a follow-up, the fund is for neurological testing. The dehydration was a separate issue. You couldn't really use this money for that.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Very good.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Calderon.
You did mention dehydration, and we're talking specifically about the fund, but I've noticed within MMA more recently than I have ever seen that fighters are struggling to make weight. They're passing out, they're having issues. What protections exist? And I mean, and this isn't necessarily say it's a you problem, but it does concern you. What protections are in place? How many times can a fighter miss weight before they have to be reclassified into another class? Or, I mean, are there any types of standards that say, okay, if fighters are proving, because I understand, I'm going to want to fight in a lower weight class to increase my odds of being victorious. But sometimes you just can't get there because you physically cannot drop that much weight. Are there any type of standards that you specifically, this athletic commission has in dealing with that issue? Or is it more of UFC, MMA organization, if you could clarify?
Okay, it's an excellent question. Excellent question. We're looking at it. Is my response to you, and I can tell you truthfully that we are looking at it. One of the ideas, I met with the full board of the Association of Ringside Physicians back in the fall. We talked about possibly moving towards the NCAA caliper test on the wrestlers. Okay, and basically, in short, it measures different points on your body, takes a body mass index, does a calculation. It will tell you the lowest weight that you can safely wrestle at. Wrestling's very similar to combat sports. It would probably work in our field also. We're looking at that. The first step that we took, though, Chairman Calderon, is we want the information out. Education's powerful. I had no idea that this dehydration of this state was that dangerous till I started really researching it. We had 2 fighters wind up in the hospital for UFC 176 here in Sacramento. Okay, blew our main event, cost the promoter lots of money. Our public didn't get to see the main event that was advertised. And at that point, then Commissioner Lemons, Dr. Lemons, who was on the thing, and I had a real frank conversation, and this was an issue that we have to discuss. But to get to your point, right now, are there standards? No. I have had conversations with promoters, though. Look, you need to move him to another weight class. You do it or I will. Okay? We do report on the fight faxes, which is the boxing, it's an official record, okay, on the thing. California recommends this boxer not fight below X amount of weight because he's missed weight twice. Things like that. But we're developing the standards, and we are actually looking at this. It's a great question, and we're engaged in that in that.
And Chairman Calderon, when Andy mentions that if you don't, I will, we're the matchmakers as regulators. So that's the fail-safe, if you will. If he sees this, and you can tell, you can tell. You're a fan and you can see what's going on here, then he'll just not approve the match. So we have that ability right now.
Thank you. A couple of follow-up questions on the Neuro Fund. And you mentioned a little bit, I think, but what are you doing now, if anything, to screen athletes for neurological issues? What are you doing now?
Please.
For the normal licensing process, just to get a license in California, you'll need an MRI, a neurological exam, an MRI summary, and then we have an entire other battery of tests, okay, that we're looking. Now, the commission has been discussing, in fact, at the last meeting, and some of our doctors are doing it, SWI MRIs, susceptible weight imaging MRIs. It gives a better picture. Doctors can see some better things.
Blood vessels.
Blood vessels, and doctors can see better in the brain. So we're already requiring MRI. I think there's only 8 states or 8 commissions in North America that require the MRI. We are one of them. We require the neurological exam and the MRI summary. So to answer your question, that's our...
And one of the statements you made is that if you had your druthers and you did more testing, you can blow through the Neuro Fund pretty quickly. But one of the first points that Mr. Carvelli raised today when you spoke to us is that we're doing really well financially. And so I'm trying to, if your mission is the health and safety of the athletes, which is also one of the first sentences in under issue number 13, and you are saying that you have resources, help me find out why we aren't doing more.
We're doing well financially with what we have. To qualify that, and I don't mean to be parsing words with you, but that's what I was, I guess, bragging about. We have a $1.4 million spending authority, and we have, I think, done a really good job with those resources. We want to do more because there are fighters that are getting themselves in trouble. They're taking PEDs. There's just a lot of stuff going on, and that we can continually do more with more resources.
And then will come the function of liability that you may have down the line if there isn't more done. And so we've seen what's happened with the NFL, and I'm sure that's something you'd like to avoid. So I hope we can work with you on finding a solution so you're able to be more thorough in protecting the athletes with whatever resources we can find.
Thank you.
Those were the 3 questions that we had listed. There are a number of other questions, as you know, that you'll be responding to in your report. Are there questions of the committee members? Are there questions? Seeing none? Then we will invite the professional groups, organizations, or members of the public who would like to speak to the Athletic Commission and their sunset review.
Do we stay here?
You want to say something? You stay here.
Just a brief comment. Tim Lynch on behalf of the Ultimate Fighting Championship, one of the largest promoters of mixed martial arts in the world. We're proud of the work that the commission has done. We were one of the early entrants in the market when California started regulating mixed martial arts in 2006. And over the last several years, the commission has really done a terrific job. We've been proud to bring events to California and hope to continue doing so through the recommended 4-year extension of the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Appreciate the comments. Further public comments? Seeing none, Chair Calderon.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I don't think, in my opinion, you can overlook the importance of the commission, especially for this state. I was very proud when, organizations like the UFC decided to start holding events in our state. I mean, that's revenue. Those are jobs. We just want to make sure going forward that, everybody is crossing their T's and dotting their I's so that we make sure that when athletes are performing in this state, they are safe and that they are being taken care of. And I do believe that, you should think of us as your partner. When you need things, come to us, talk to us, because rather than worrying about potential consequences of, bringing up a certain issue, it's better to get ahead of it, talk to us about it so that we can try and find a solution before that problem ever occurs. But we do appreciate your work. I do appreciate your work. I can't underscore how much I believe the importance of your commission and this state's commission is, and the prosperity of this state. But again, think of us as a partner and never hesitate to come to us to try and find solutions to problems that you feel either are current or could potentially arise. But thank you both for your time.
Other questions? Seeing none, then we will thank you very much for your comments and for the good work you've been doing over the last couple of years. I appreciate that and looking forward to the report and the future in the next few years as well. So without any further comments, we will adjourn today's hearing on the commission reviews and the sunset reviews, and we'll establish the hearing on Monday and for the joint hearing at 9 a.m. in room 4203, which is right here. So the sunset review hearings will continue Monday morning, 9 a.m. in 4203 here. Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Appreciate it very much. We're adjourned.